Hi folks, this is Jay. Hope you're okay today. I'm just going to read a testimony of a guy called Patrick, and I'll give a link to it's about DNA. Before I do, I'll just read this by Gordy Slack. He says, I met dozens of people at an American atheist conference who were dead sure that evolutionary theory was correct, though they didn't know a thing about adaptive radiation, genetic drift, or even plain old natural selection. They came to the Darwinianism via a commitment to naturalism and atheism, not through the study of science. Evolutionist Gordy Slack. Patrick, hey Patrick, young guy, says this. Someone gave me a recording of a scientist, a creation whose name I don't recall, giving a lecture on DNA, mutations, etc., which forever convinced me that evolution is an untenable theory. However, it was almost 30 years ago that I listened to that lecture, so last year I thought I would get on the web and see if there was any new information out there from the evolution camp. Well, there was nothing, no kidding. So I read every book I could get my hands on regarding the current state of affairs from the creationist viewpoint, and was blown away by the wealth of data that was coming in support of biblical truth. Now more than ever, creationists should be getting a hearing, yet strangely, evolutionists are making more noise than ever. I really believe that Darwinian, neo or otherwise, evolution is one of the most spectacular delusions ever foisted on mankind. The devil has done some fine work. Thank you all for taking up the fight and giving me and many others hope. And by the way, the 2007 article Life's Irreducible Structure by Alex Williams was the most lucid I've ever read on the subject, including B. And Jonathan Sarafati, who's I think he was a chess champion, give some quotes here, which he says. He gives some quotes. I'll link to the article. The whole approach of the critic reminds me of an honest statement by the evolutionary scientist Gordy Slack. What neo-creationists get right and evolutionary shares lessons he's learned from intelligent design camp. This is The Scientist, June 2008. The evolutionist says, which leads me to a final confession to my ID foes. When they say that some proponents of evolution are blind followers, they're right. A few years ago I covered a conference of the American Atheists in Las Vegas. I met dozens of people there who were dead sure that evolutionary theory was correct, though they didn't know a thing about adaptive radiation, genetic drift, or even plain old natural selection. They came to their Darwinianism via a commitment to naturalism and atheism, not through the study of science. They're still correct when they say evolution happens, but I'm afraid they're wrong to call themselves skeptics, unencumbered by ideology. Many of them are best described as zealots. Ideological zeal isn't incompatible with good science. It's a coincidence with a theory proves nothing about that theory's explanatory power. This was after he admitted this. I think it's disingenuous to argue that the origin of life is irrelevant to evolution. It is no less relevant than the Big Bang is to physics or cosmology. Evolution should be able to explain, in theory at least, all the way back to the very first organism that would replicate itself through biological or chemical process, and to understand that organism fully, we would simply have to know what came before it. And right now we are nowhere close. I believe a material explanation will be found, but that confidence comes from my faith that science is up to the task of explaining, in purely material and naturalistic terms, the whole history of life. My faith is well founded, but it's still faith. And then I think Sarafati says, in Christ, Jonathan Sarafati, PhD. but I think the main quote was Gordy Slack. So basically we've seen by Gordy Slack there, the evolutionist, two things. One, that many evolutionists who come from atheist background are zealots rather than real thinkers, and that there is faith involved in believing in some aspects of evolution, i.e. the very beginning, the very origin of life. And I know you atheists are going to say, it's not called the origins of life, it's called whatever, you know, whatever it is, Genesis or whatever, you know. Abiogenesis. Just getting my thing, because you know what you like, you atheists, you will jump on me. Anyhow, hope you're okay. So, just a little bit of evidence there to show you that a lot of atheists can be zealots about evolution and not really know what they're talking about. And also, there's faith involved as well. Alright? Take care, and God bless you, atheist. Just remember not to be zealots, and to make sure you got evidence for this faith of yours. Alright? Take care, God bless.